You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. I'm Roby Brock. We appreciate you staying with us. All right, we got our legislative roundtable geared up here. Representative Andrew Collins, Democrat of Little Rock, Representative R.J. Hawk, Republican of Bryant. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The session's over officially, sine die, adjourned. I speak on behalf of all Arkansans when I say thank God you guys are done with your session work, okay? I appreciate it very much. So, RJ, you were a newcomer this time around. What was it like this first session? They tell you what it's all going to be about, and then the reality really sets in.
Well, you know, leading up to this, I think Andrew actually came up to me and said, here's the bathroom. You'll want to know where this is. But, you know, you hear that a lot about you're really just trying to figure out where the bathrooms are that first week. But for me, I've served on the Bryant City Council and I had a little bit of governmental background to it. And it took about 4 weeks to just kind of get a rhythm of what was going on, getting through the bill process. And then once you hit that groove, I felt really comfortable. I'm not saying I knew everything by any stretch of the imagination, but I really enjoyed it. But then you hit spring break, and then you take a break, and then you come back for 3 weeks. And so by the time that it ended, I thought I was like in a good groove, and it was over. And so, but no, I really enjoyed it. I feel like I was able to get some good legislation passed during that time, and I enjoyed the whole process.
It sounds like RJ's sad to be leaving the state capitol, and I don't know that anybody else experiences it like that. Andrew, how about you? How was the session for you this time around?
Well, I think there were some great new people. RJ being one of them did some really good work. I think overall the session was frustrating for me. I think it was a step back in a lot of ways. We just kept so much focus on these big national culture war issues. And, I think that detracts from the real work that we have to do, which is, education, public safety. And then when we did focus on those really important issues, to me, the policy just wasn't right. I wasn't very happy with the way the Lawrence bill came out. I think that's going to be something that's not good for public schools in Arkansas. And I don't think that the crime bill is really going to reduce crime in the way that people would hope it would. So from where I sit, it was disappointing, but no fault of RJ and many other great colleagues that I work with.
Well, we're going to get into your grievances in this conversation here. Quickly, though, I want to ask that you had a bill that was vetoed, one of the few vetoed bills in this legislative session. The House didn't even come back to take it up in terms of that, I guess because the Senate said they weren't going to do it as well. How disappointed are you in that? What are your plans to potentially bring that bill back at some point in time?
Well, I was surprised and I was a little puzzled by the veto, to be honest with you. It was going to create a heart attack task force, no cost to the state, getting at one of the big public health issues that we face in Arkansas. The ostensible reason for the veto was that it was a duplication of an existing advisory council, but that advisory council was going to become the task force, so there was actually no duplication.
Can they still do what you want them to do, though? I mean, they can still undergo the task that you had at hand, can't they?
Yeah, it's possible for an ad hoc group like what currently exists to do that, but what we were going to do was create in statute a task force that had appointments by the governor, had, sort of a set of things set out in statute. We have a stroke task force. It does great work. It brings, different stakeholders together and has had an impact in addressing stroke in the state. We wanted to do the same for heart attack.
Were you okay with the way the veto process was handled? Because there were some other colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle that were co-sponsors of some of these bills.
Yeah, I mean, until I actually, to Andrew's point, I was a little bit puzzled just because when it was explained on the House floor, it was exactly what Andrew said, where it was going to take things over. And so, I was a little bit puzzled on that one. Being the new guy, I was still trying to learn the whole process on how, when we came back so I had a lot of questions.
You just wait till you get a bill vetoed, buddy. Then
no, and I agree. I actually, I talked to some colleagues and they said the same thing because, you fight really hard. I would imagine you work really hard to get it through the House and the Senate, and then, at the very end of the session, it gets vetoed. And I didn't know the whole process as far as sine die is concerned, coming back to look at that bill again. And so I was a little bit surprised just because I didn't really know how that whole process worked until I asked questions there at the end.
All right. Let's talk about, I'm going to give you both an opportunity to tell me what was the best bill to come out of this session. You guys can disagree with each other on that. And then I'm going to ask you a separate question on the worst bill to come out of this session. But RJ, I'll let you start first. Best bill to come out of this session.
Absolutely, I think it was the LEARNS bill. I think that when you look at education in Arkansas, what we were doing, the status quo wasn't working. And so what the LEARNS bill is going to allow for is we're going to get teacher raises that are, you're seeing it right now. Saw a teacher in Jonesboro just the other night tweet out about how she just got a $5,000 raise at what she wasn't expecting. And so along with that, you're taking things in the LEARNS bill that other states have already used, and it's worked. Arizona, Florida, West Virginia. And so we're now going to implement that in Arkansas, and I think that's going to be really, really beneficial for our kids moving forward.
All right, you disagree, but I'm going to let you save that for worst bill of the session. Tell me what was the best bill of the session to come out.
Sure. I actually thought a bill by Representative Clowney was a really great bill, kind of under the radar, but it requires an autopsy when there's a suspected drug overdose. And why is that an important bill? You know, for one, we need to know the scope of the problem if we're going to address drugs in our state. And two, we actually get federal money based on, you know, the number of fatalities from drug overdose. And without knowing that and systematically undercounting that, we were leaving a lot on the table. So that's an example. There's other bills like that, but it's an example of a bill that doesn't get a lot of headlines, but has a real impact for us dealing with drugs, which is a huge issue in our state.
All right, I'll stay with you on this one. What was the worst bill of this session, Representative Collins? Was it the LEARNS Act?
You gave it away. I do think it's the LEARNS Act because of the scope and the magnitude of it, okay? I mean, there are some things in the LEARNS Act that I think are positive, but overall, it's vouchers, okay? That's the biggest thing that I take away from that bill. It takes public school money and gives it to private schools. That's just what it does. And I don't see how that is a positive for public schools in Arkansas. You know, Representative Hawk mentioned it does raise the salary minimum to $50,000, which is good in itself, but it doesn't provide enough money to the districts to raise the whole salary schedule.
Right.
For
the teachers that are experienced and have been there for years, that's going to have to come out of local school budgets.
Well, exactly. And in fact,
which was always the promise of the LEARNS Act, by the way. I mean, it never did promise it was going to do a salary schedule increase across the board. It was just for those under 50,000. So.
No, it wasn't. And in fact, it got rid of the salary schedule that was mandated by statute. So now it leaves it to districts. But without giving them enough money to raise all those salaries up, you're going to see compression of the salaries, which I'm concerned about as far as recruitment and retention, which is the goal. I'm not sure you're going to be able to get that retention benefit if you're not able to go up from that $50,000.
Lots of money for literacy too, another big area of the LEARNS Act. All right, I'll let you defend the LEARNS Act one more time based on what Representative Collins has said, but then you got to tell me what the worst bill of this legislative session was.
I'll say this, the salary schedule, we're seeing, you just like any business or anything, you got to cut some of the fat off, right? That things that you don't need in a school district. And so you're seeing it in Cabot. Cabot just published their entire step and grade, and it was actually better than what they had before. I mentioned Jonesboro.
What did Cabot get rid of that was fat?
I don't know what. I just know they published their step and grade and it worked. You know, so to say that the step and grade's completely going away, or that what their pay scale is going to happen was completely going away, it's working in certain school districts. Marvel Lane, it's a school that got saved essentially because of the LEARNS Act. And so I would just say, look, with any type of legislation, we had to do something different. We had to try to make a positive impact on our kids. And why not start now? Why not try this? And, you know, if it doesn't work, just like with any other legislation, we can come back in and try to amend it.
Yeah, no, I think that there will be. All right, worst bill of the session.
Okay, and this is not one of the big three that we talked about, but one that I really took issue with was the drone bill. It was to not allow for state agencies to use foreign entity drones for consumption. So what we're saying is, like the police units in different cities can't use a product which DJI is the #1 drone product in the world. They're based out of China, right? And it's a matter of public safety. You've had police officers that have gone and gotten trained on these products, and now we've gone in and we've put in legislation saying, you know what, no more. If you take state dollars, you cannot have these drones. And so now without a funding mechanism, we're telling all these different agencies that you've got to go get a new drone, or you've got to, re-outfit your department with new drones, and sometimes those are $3,000 or more for these units, and we didn't have any type of funding mechanism to back that up with.
Well, maybe you'll just have to source an American or an Arkansas manufacturer of
And
drones right here in the state of Arkansas.
And I agree with you, and I'm for that. But I just wanted to see if we were going to say you cannot have these anymore. Let's give them some money or something to say, we're going to help you offset this to get rid of these DJI products, to get American-made products. We're going to help you with that, but that wasn't in the bill.
Well, they couldn't do that. They got to give teachers pay raises out of the LEARNS bill, so that's where that money went. I'm just kidding. All right, tell me what you guys are going to be working on in the interim, and there is a potential for a special session on Medicaid. At least the governor has admitted to me that is something that's being considered. RJ, I'll let you go first. What are you going to be working on in the interim?
So during the interim, I filed a interim study on the NIL for high school athletics, and that was a big bill for me. A lot of coaches reached out. Speaker Shepard has said in the past, by no way, stretch or form, do we want to have to do NIL for the high school, but it's coming whether we want it or not. And so I've already started with the AAA, with coaches, even some parents and teachers, to get working groups together during the interim to figure out what that legislation needs to look like in Arkansas.
All right, what about you?
Yeah, I'll be focused, along with I think the rest of the legislature, on two big things. One is rulemaking, especially with LEARNS. Those rules have to be promulgated by the Department of Education and then reviewed by the Legislative Council. So
same on the sentencing reform bill too. A lot of rules and regs on that one.
They got to figure out what's a 25, what's a 50% duration crime. So a lot's going to come out in those. We're going to actually know what those bills do a little bit more after that rulemaking process. The other thing which you mentioned is Medicaid. There's really three different ways Medicaid's coming up. I mean, we've got this disenrollment coming off of, the pandemic. The people were added and did not get removed after the pandemic. That's happening over the next 6 months. The work requirement that the governor's pursuing, and then whatever comes out of the review for cost cutting in Medicaid, that may be the subject of the special session you mentioned.
All right, got 30 seconds left. Do you want to add anything on Medicaid?
No, I mean, we've got to take a good hard look at that, and I think that's what the governor's wanting to do with the special session. I'm on board to working with Representative Collins and others to figure out what's best for Arkansans.
All right, you guys come back sometime. This has been fun. All right, Representative Hawk, Representative Collins, thank you both very much for being here.
Thanks, Roby.
All right. We are back with more right after this.